And that's why the Bible is very, very careful, I believe, about graven images, because graven images can actually serve that function of focusing faith in bad directions. And that's why icons, I think, are a real danger. Any kind of graven images like this that can focus faith, one has to be careful on because what one might accomplish with it. And I believe these rituals are already going on in our mass media. I think we're already becoming acclimated. In fact, they're probably leading the charge amongst the media are our movies and our music for doing overt pagan occult rituals in our music with our top artists in our movies as well too. If you see sneak previews in the movie theater, almost every one of them are about some kind of occult activity, and such activities are ongoing. In fact, we've even gotten young people acclimated through Harry Potter and other things to make this just sort of a normal part of what's going on. But then we have TV. TV is doing the same thing too. I mean, we have video games that actually have these kind of activities. And even if you look at single events like Super Bowl halftime shows and things like this, these kind of events are happening over and over again, acclimating us for this importance of rituals. And in fact, I would just go back, just to give you another example, to the early days of Nazism, when they would have these Nuremberg demonstrations. Those were carefully constructed rituals to focus people's faith in Hitler and this ancient belief system that he was selling. And so we're being prepared in a similar form, I believe. Now, the last leg of the triad are willing subjects that are willing to invite these spirits or hosts. I believe God puts a protective barrier for those who do not want contact with the spirit world. Usually, when we are harassed by demonic spirits, it's because we've allowed some portal that we've opened a door for them, whether it's a Ouija board or other occult activities or things like this. And so they need to get the population more willing to invite these hosts. And I believe that there is a major PR effort, public relations, that have been going on for decades in our society and our media to create sympathy for the devil and for other dark forces. And a couple examples I would use are TV shows like Fallen on ABC, which actually showed a fallen Nephilim that was trying to get redemption. This movie Legion, which actually showed Michael the Archangel rebelling against God on our behalf because in their storyline God wanted to destroy us, along with Gabriel, and Michael comes to fight God on our behalf. Even shows like Medium, which put a happy face on these kind of activities of connecting with the spirit world. And I think you will find for other people who don't fall for these kind of things that there are more subtle things, very kind, gentle, light worker type New Age activities, the environmental movement, Masonic activities, Masons, yoga, martial arts. These all can be seemingly unassuming adult entryways into inviting, becoming acclimated and inviting portals for these kind of evocations. And I just want to point out here that human assistance in this process of bringing forth these three aspects may not always even come from willing or even witting subjects that are aware of what they're doing. There can be many executives in movies and television, other kind of things, and publishing who aren't aware of this kind of stuff and do not realize they're even promoting it. Not every one of them wears a cape and horns in the back, although there are some that do. I would submit that probably most Americans that aren't Christians, their basic gods mostly are Mammon and Bacchus. They worship money and they worship pleasure. And anything that they find fun or fulfilling. But they can be unaware subject to help promote this activity. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say that in summarizing, drugs play a key role in opening portals and contacting the spirit realm. And not all, but many, but not all of them are hallucinations. And many of them are well documented that cannot be explained by just mere hallucinations. The consumption of substances with psychotropic properties are becoming increasingly significant in their impact in recent days. Some are done wittingly, some unwittingly in this process. And again, there's new developments as far as additives to our food and water to expand it. And this evocation scenario that I've shown here even a black awakening response by the subjects, can even be consistent with at least one biblical interpretation or understanding of these passages. There are actions, I believe, now behind the scenes right now to prepare for this event, that it is premeditated and being planned, and that I do not know, Christians may or may not be around to see this event when it occurs, but I would submit even if we're not, the impact is already happening in society with the number of people who are succumbing to the spiritual impacts of drug consumption and other kind of occult activity, and as well as the increase in psychotic violence that's occurring. So, the final actions to take to close this, actions to take in response, I suggest. One is control the substances you and your family ingest. And that requires, and that's all materials, drugs, food, anything you take. And that requires education, a substantial commitment on your behalf for education, tempered by reasonableness and balance. One can become paranoid in the subject, so you've got to be reasonable, but be smart, be informed in your decisions, and invest the time to be aware of what you ingest. Now, not only the physical intake, but also the intellectual and spiritual intake as well. So control the audiovisual programming, and where that programming is for a purpose, that you and your family are exposed to. And I believe that's not just limited to what we're used to of controlling profanity, sex, and violence as being dangerous to our families. Like, for example, kids shows and things like that. I think if you watch some of the children's shows today, there are psychedelic elements and even magical elements that don't register necessarily in profanity or violence or sex, may not even be kicked up with protective software, but you need to be aware of the worldview that you're being taught to your children. I also think that you should talk to your children, even if they're older teenagers, about a real Christian worldview, a real one, and a Christian perspective to what is being expressed in the culture and media. You will not be able to totally shield them from exposure if they're going to school, if they're around other friends. But what you can do is be ahead of the curve and instruct them about what they're being prepared and what to understand. And what you will find is that it will not be a turnoff to your children. They will actually be fascinated by the material similar to what's been in this presentation and some of the radio shows like Brother Chris's show and things. They will be fascinated to hear about this, and it'll be a way for you to connect with your youth about this. And you can also fill the void. If you have to limit certain entertainment and other content that they can have, there can be some very interesting Bible study that goes on, sharing with Christians, and there's even some fiction, some action fiction and things like this that are done by Christian, from enlightened Christians about these topics that can actually have healthy understanding for them and something that can actually fascinate them. And also, I think you should take time to warn family and friends, churchgoers, and the public. Many of them will not understand when you tell them about the information we've covered here. Even Christians, it will be too overwhelming for them. But I recommend that everybody listening here take the risk anyway to share this information with people you know, and hopefully they will appreciate it later. And I'd like to quote a passage as the final word here that maybe you could consider in a different light from what you had before, given what we've covered right now. This is from 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 7 and 8. And I'm going to include the Greek words in here with some definitions, some of the alternative definitions within Strong's Word. It says, "For mysterion, or mysteries, religious secrets, which are confided only to the initiated and not ordinary mortals, for mysterion of iniquity doth already work. Only arti," Greek arti, which means now at this time, kateko, which means that which hinders the Antichrist from making his appearance. Only now at that time, that hindrance is occurring until genomai, which means to arise, to appear in history, come upon the stage, will come out of the mesos, or the midst. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy the brightness of his coming. So, this passage can be read to say that these mysteries or religious secrets confided only to the initiated, pertaining to iniquity, are already at work, and only now at this time that which hinders the Antichrist from making his appearance is occurring until it arises where it appears in history, comes on the world stage, out of our midst. And then the wicked one will be revealed. And I think this is consistent with the discussion narrative we've had today. And that concludes my presentation, Brother Chris, on this information on spirit portals and drugs.
All right. Well, it's certainly fascinating, and I really like the new information, too. One question, if you could hit real quick, is what about people with, I know a lot of people will be concerned right now about antidepressants, and they're maybe on them, their children are on them, without giving any